The corporate media has been struggling with Fantastic Four flopping at the box office, going through the 5 stages of grief. And this is not good, as many of these stages involve coping. Everyone involved is looking for excuses as to why it failed, rather than reasons. Excuses being external causes they can't do anything about because it prevents them realizing that they might be the problem, dooming them to repeat this cycle for movies in the future. But Fantastic Four has gone through these like clockwork. We start with denial. The Fantastic Four First Steps breaks box office curse. Cost at least $300 million to make with a global opening of $220 million. What a banger! But as time marches on and we get more figures, we move on to anger. Some people don't want to hear this, but it might be time to stop putting all the blame on studios and creatives for underperforming movies. It might be time to start looking at the intelligence levels of the moviegoers. The phenomenally stupid Jurassic Park Rebirth can crush Superman and Fantastic Four, then something might be wrong with us, and not the studios or the creatives. That's right, studios and creatives are such geniuses, such savants when it comes to business acumen, that they don't know how to make a movie that people want.
Hey, that was easy.
I think we got the anger one down. Bargaining. 6 biggest ways the Fantastic Four has already changed the MCU for good. This movie may not have been financially successful itself, but it did morph the MCU from a bad thing into a good thing, and everything in the future will be successful now. It's set up doom, cosmic forces, an overpowered baby, and family.
I got family.
Family.
Pedro Pascal also sets a new standard for the smartest man alive. It's not a high standard, it's just a new one. But then we slip into depression. This is the same one that was previously angry, so we are actually moving through the stages. Oh wow. Marvel is in deep, deep trouble. A lot of factors to be discussed and looked at as to why this is happening. It's a good movie, people! It's just a shame to see it caught up in the grinders of things they had nothing to do with. It's not their fault, it had nothing to do with them. It's all external influences they couldn't control. The Fantastic Four is just a poor, oppressed minority in the Hollywood universe. They're just a victim of oppressive tyrants. But then again, who wouldn't be depressed with a devastating 80% drop at the box office? Friday to Friday. Finally though, you hit acceptance, the calm after the storm. I think there's an obvious reason why Fantastic Four collapsed. It was always going to collapse. This was really just a fight they couldn't win, and they just did the best they could with it. These characters just aren't popular, and no Fantastic Four movie before has ever been very good. This isn't Batman or Superman or Avengers, which I agree with. But going back to the previous comment about there being something wrong with the studios and the creatives, if these characters are not known by the audience, then it's your job to sell them to me. It's your job to market them to me. It's your job to make them known. And if you can't manage that because you pitched it wrong at the audience, well, that's your fault, not the audience's. Marvel has lost the goodwill, the benefit of the doubt to get the audience to put in work to try and learn the characters. And the studios need to know that. They have to know that now there's a higher bar. You're going to have to put more effort in. And you have to bear in mind your own damaged reputation now. It is interesting when they talk about the obvious reason why it failed, though, because there are some other articles that may shed a light on what that reason might be. Can we talk about how the Fantastic Four First Steps is all about female empowerment? And just so we're all aware, this article is, and that's a good thing. So what is one obvious reason why Fantastic Four collapsed at the box office? Well, it bombed with their target audience. The audience that they marketed to, made the movie for. Well, Fantastic Four had 17% families compared to Superman's 31%, which for a movie supposedly about family,
I got family.
that's not a good sign. Not that I actually think the movie is about family, they just say the word, and that's about as deep as it gets. And the breakdown of the audience was men at 69%, which was so bad even Grace Randolph had to comment on it. Despite Vanessa Kirby's Sue Storm and such a strong focus on motherhood and Julie Garner's really well-realized Silver Surfer, women did not show up to this movie, leaning very heavily male, because it's a superhero movie. And you can try and edit out the core themes of what a movie was and rejig it around, maybe do reshoots, but it's still there, and you can feel it. One of the reasons why it feels so shallow and basic to blokes is because it doesn't have any of their morality in it.
Force, my friends, is violence, the supreme authority from which all other authority is derived.
Because they weren't the target audience, but they were the ones that turned up. I did laugh at that. I'm calling it Sue Storm as the strongest woman in the MCU. I don't think that's true. Quite obviously, it's... I did not know that's who I meant. I meant that one. My tabs are in the wrong order. It's Gia from Secret Invasion, not Pedro Pascal. Not because he's not in the running, just because he's not as strong as Gia, right? That's what happened there. No, Screen Rant came out with an article where on Google it said superhero box office battle, Marvel triumphs over DC rival. Like, sorry, what? Fantastic Four First Steps crushes 300 million DCEU superhero flop. Like, that doesn't sound right. I can't remember that. And it's like, oh yeah, overtakes the infamous DCEU team-up film at the domestic box office. Whenever you get a title this long, you know they're trying to sell you something. So when you look it up, you're like, well, Fantastic Four, 230 million versus Justice League's 229 million. But I don't know if you can notice a difference between those two box office takings. We are $230 million behind Justice League, but they're still going to use titles like crushes DCEU superhero flop. How badly is Fantastic Four flopping? When you beating the domestic box office by $1 million crushes it as you make less money. All I'm saying is we are reaching levels of copium hitherto unknown in the galaxy. And this became a very common trend of, look, Superman 1. Whatever you think of the movies, whichever one you prefer, whichever one you want to watch, or watch neither of them, Superman made more money.
I had a dream that if one of you died, I'd get a tattoo of your name.
And she got you. Yeah.
Everybody knows it, and so they stopped talking about it. Instead, they went trawling through the archives for any excuse, any milestone that they could brag about. Oh, we've won this. What, it crossed a poetic box office milestone. What was that? Well, it was the first Fantastic Four movie to cross $400 million worldwide. I can only assume they want you to stop at the article there, because if you actually scroll down to the numbers that they put in themselves, you can actually see that, okay, so it made 100 million more than the first movie, but it would also cost 100 million more to make. So even discounting 20 years of inflation at even a 2-to-1 break-even ratio, Fantastic Four was far more profitable. But we don't care about reality, we've got a headline to write. I think my favourite of the Cope goalposts was this one though. Pedro Pascal is about to pass a major box office milestone thanks to Fantastic Four. Now we're not even looking for the movie, it's just tangentially related to it. This guy was in an IP and it's his highest ever box office. Or if you're looking for extra Cope and actual milestones, still too much of an achievement for you, how about just about scraping out of the all-time bottom 5 MCU movies? Like, look, we lost a lot of money, but at least we're not going to be in a bottom 5 chart on YouTube at some point. I mean, we're bad, but we're not so bad we'll go down in the annals of history. Now, all these are funny to look at, but they do highlight where people want to live in a perceptual reality rather than just reality. I would prefer to know the truth so I can deal with it, rather than lie to myself enough that I will convince myself of something that's nicer to believe. So more comfortable. The correct thing to do in this situation would be to look back at what's happened, work out why it's happened, who caused it, and make sure they can't do it again. The problem with doing that, though, is it requires quite a zoomed-out view. It's a lot of abstraction. You can't just live in the moment, because you have to bear in a whole timeline with multiple people, multiple different perspectives, be able to simulate what the audience wants in your own brain, and view the world from their perspective rather than your little Hollywood bubble, and then run that simulation across the entire timeline to work out what on earth happened. It requires an objective point of view where you don't have a dog in Hollywood's camp, you're just trying to work out where the mismatch is between them so you can make Hollywood do what the audience wants. You have to remove yourself because it doesn't matter if you like what the audience wants, you still have to give it to them. The problem is, simulating all of that stuff is beyond more people than you'd expect. Once you come to this realization, a lot of things in the world make a lot more sense. And I think this is one of the causes for stuff like this. Despite Fantastic Four's disappointment at the box office, the next 3 MCU movies are all guaranteed heavy hitters. Oh, this one was awful, but the next 3 that do exactly the same thing, they'll succeed. They have loads of big names in them that may carry them to big box offices. But I think the story will probably suffer from all the same problems that everything else does nowadays. You also have, with all those big names, well, now you need to make even more at the box office to pay their wages. And by they, I mean Robert Downey Jr.'s. But if you notice, this isn't any zoomed out perspective. This is just next thing, next thing, next thing. It's living in the moment. Oh, well, that one failed, but the next one won't. And even when it tries to analyze why the box office failed, it's all external causes for Hollywood. Audience just have superhero fatigue. They just don't want to do the amount of homework the MCU can require, which is because it's bad. If the stuff was good, they would have already seen it and it wouldn't be homework. It suffered from weak word of mouth, blurred the line from essential to optional viewing, which seems weird when you've just complained about the amount of homework that people have. If something is essential viewing, and that's homework. All of these are really surface level topics that maybe they believe themselves, maybe they've got from a press release. None of this dives into why do people watch movies, and why aren't they getting that from these? Not a single one even briefly considers that Hollywood might be the problem. Of the ones that do, again, it's very surface level. It focuses on essentially the aesthetic level of a story, which, let's face it, is really the most inconsequential part of entertainment. Yeah, you can complain about CGI in a movie, but TV series have had bad CGI forever, and no one is going to stop watching Babylon 5 because the space battles look bad. And yet they think that we finally pulled off comic book camp, which is even stranger to me when they go, despite this legacy, superhero movies over the past 2 decades have kept a safe distance from comic book associations. The tone has been mostly serious, towing a delicate line to appease fans while also attracting general audiences of all ages and backgrounds. And I'm like, where are these serious movies? One of the main criticisms in the last 2 phases has been that they've not been serious. They all have humour, and yet because the IQ level of Hollywood seems to be essentially cratering through the floor faster than British temperatures in the winter time, the reality seems to be that Hollywood creators are about as funny as gout. But my main issue with all of these stages that we go through on a regular basis now when it comes to movie releases is we don't get to the core of the problem. No one wants to dance around and not say anything because, I might offend Hollywood and not get access to a review copy. And it's just as bizarre from Hollywood's perspective that they don't want to analyze any of this stuff. Like, how many times do you have to lose before you think, actually, maybe no matter how hard it is to hear that we may have been wrong, that we may have been pushing horrific stuff for years, maybe it's time we think about it. You would have thought that someone in Hollywood would have come to that opinion by now. That someone would have been turning the thumbscrews on everyone else to work out, actually, no, you need to stop. But when it turns out that Lena Dunham is still getting work in the industry, you're like, you haven't learned anything, have you? And I don't see how they can when they and the corporate media go through these stages every time a movie is released just to come to one conclusion. Well, actually, we broke a load of records. We laid the groundwork to improve things in the future. It could have been worse, and we've set the stage for the next ones to be absolute bangers. This was the foundation of Survive Until 25, and then we saw it, and now the fix is in 26. I think to solve these problems, you'd need to stop, look back, analyze, and think about issues that quite possibly the people in the industry can't comprehend. Because this isn't a problem for yes men or people that think, we've always done it this way. When Hollywood is an industry renowned for sugarcoating things for the big name divas, you might have to face that those are the people causing the problem and they need to be told. Because really, how long can you go on like this? Lags in its second weekend, making only 40 million after a says strong opening, but come on. Craters 66% overall in its second weekend, only for this weekend to crater another 60%. Because rather than actually setting up the future for Doomsday, the hype's for this one, no, it's shown that actually interest is low even for Doomsday. It's alright introducing Robert Downey Jr. on a stage in front of everyone that wants to cheer because they like him. But how many people in the street who don't care about Marvel movies and haven't since Endgame or Infinity War, how many of them actually care about him now? Iron deficiency, man. In the age of the internet, people are swarmed with so much stuff, so much information, so many inputs, that time seems compressed, memories are shorter, because you're constantly filling it with new things. And that means people stop caring about IPs far quicker than they used to. A 3-year gap between something may have been possible before, it isn't now. And a lot of people haven't thought of Robert Downey Jr. for more than 3 years. That's why they had to cut while it aims to escape the MCU's lowest grosses. It overtakes the worst rated MCU film on Rotten Tomatoes at the domestic box office. There is so many caveats to that one, I don't know where to start. Well, I mean, at least it made more than the worst thought about MCU film of all time. And that's a flex. Look, I'm pretty sure I can sprint faster than a paraplegic child, but I'm not going to brag about it much. The Fantastic Four had more than just one issue. It was actually a really strange way of marketing a movie at all. Pedro Pascal admits stealing Joseph Quinn's sandwiches during the Fantastic Four press tour. So, he could just get Vanessa to make him some new ones. But no, it was so they could reveal light-hearted, family-like drama behind the scenes. Because don't you understand, they're a family in the movie, so they've got to be a family on the press tour.
Yummy old man. We've moved on from daddy. I'm loving the new title of Yummy Old Man.
That's now something people are supposed to be. They're not acting in a movie because of all the Handmaid's Tale viewers which are shipping you can't actually abstract. They need you to be the thing all the time. This is why in the Superman marketing they kept talking about chemistry.
How did you manage to get this chemistry just right?
And trying to pretend that they were together in the interviews. Or why Pedro Pascal had to have this done to him.
These are gorgeous. I think that's my favorite image so far.
Because, we're husband and wife, and that means in an interview we've got to fawn over each other.
If you're husband and wife, this is apparently how you sit.
Like anything, the style of which something is pitched shows the target demographic it's aimed at. And the marketing for Fantastic Four was like weird and creepy.
I am your cool slutty daddy.
Or, look, don't you just love this adorable lounge fly? Isn't he just adorable? It's a little bag you can put no one's ever seen a movie for this. Or how about the rather wonderful time where we find out that these people are absolute lunatics?
There's a handful of fascists that I would just throw into outer space. That's what I would do.
So would I, but I think then Hollywood would be gone. But that's just deliberately misunderstanding how words are used. Everyone knows what they mean when they say the word. They're not using the genuine definition. They don't mean socialists, communists, anyone on that end of the spectrum way over there. They mean anyone that disagrees with them, which is most people when you're a lunatic. And then doesn't she look radiant with her bump? Which style of dress would you prefer? And Bob Iger coming out and using his grand contribution to the recent box office slump to say, well, I mean, we can find original property or better, and we do continue to mine the library of characters and property, but even though there's been Fantastic Four movies before, we consider this to be original property. We're introducing those characters because people aren't familiar with them. And I'm like, you use that entire paragraph to say nothing. And this is the CEO. You expect the CEOs of a company to be impressive people. These are people that should talk and think, oh, I've never thought of that before. I've never thought of it that way. Actually, now you've said that, it puts everything you've done in perspective. It makes sense. I can see the strategic view that you've got. I wouldn't trust Bob Iger with a bakery. If you started asking him why his bakery had collapsed, he was like, well, I mean, your ingredients come from all over the world, and there are some ingredients over here, and sometimes we do use those ingredients to make bakery products, but as long as we've got bakery products, then I think that the bakery products will continue into the future because we've actually been in business for quite a while and we bake things. And there's just no excuse for such unimpressive people when you're paying them so much money. His strategic value is, well, creating new IP is great value, but there isn't really any priority between sequels, remakes, originals, which is what make great movies. But what does this mean? Can you describe it to me? Can you explain what a great movie is? Can you tell me why the audience actually resonates with some movies and not others? Can you tell me the different demographics or the target audiences of various different movies and what you did to capture them? Do you know where they're going? Do you know anything about how things are done this way? Have you ever thought about it? Because I think it is my job to think about that because I have to make these videos. But the audience, it's not their job. They just need to go and look at something and say whether they like it or not. They don't need to know why or realize why or be able to put into words why they like something. They could just have a feeling about it and leave. But it is his. It's his more than mine. I have to watch something and then think why I liked it, but he has to understand what I want before it's even made. And he doesn't have the excuse to go, it's just great movies. Because these two words are anything but just. That is an incredibly complex idea, but it's something people knew instinctually in the past because people were more naturally aligned with what they were in humanity. They were living in reality, and that gave them a grounding in the values that make good stories instinctually. Their cultures were homogenous and made from these values. They were brought up in it, raised in it, and it's like a fish doesn't know it's in water because it's always been there. It probably can't even imagine leaving the tank because it's something it's never experienced before. And so everything that fish produces will be based in water. It doesn't have to be clever because it's just what that person is. And so even if they can only see the world from their perspective, they're still going to make the right thing. That's not true anymore. Now, Hollywood's values have morphed into a perceptual reality. They have made a world on top of the world and lied to themselves, coped enough through various different stages that they don't like the world how it is and they would prefer if it was like the one in their brains, to the point where they wanted everyone to agree with them about things which aren't real.
There's a handful of fascists that I would just throw into outer space.
But if you have no problem living in a fake world surrounded by people who will obviously lie to you to preserve your feelings, well now, you're a fish in water thinking it's tomato ketchup. And you make movies about tomato ketchup and everyone else is like, what is this crap? This bears no resemblance to my world. And that doesn't make great movies. And look, that's my theory. You can say that's just my opinion. You can agree or disagree. But I don't think that matters as much as you thinking about. Does Bob Iger have a theory about it? Does Bob Iger even have a theory that he's thought about and can put into words? Or would it just be the same old excuses, which are everyone else's fault, not ours? This is why when the critics came out originally and said it had its mojo back, that only lasted until you saw the movie. And then even if you like it, you can't say it's a deep movie. And I think what summed it up best for me was a paragraph from Eric Kane's review about the Fantastic Four. Everything's quickly resolved with little to no ingenuity. It's all style and no substance. It's all about aesthetic, but it actually has no more depth to it over that. But he says this, and I don't think this is necessarily that the fans will eat it up, but I think this is essentially Hollywood's perception of the fans. Marvel Boardroom's idea of what the fans are like. Fans will eat it up, I'm sure. The Fantastic Four did stuff together. There were callbacks and Easter eggs. Pedro is so handsome. Vanessa Kirby is Sue Storm. Heart emoji, heart emoji. It's so comic book. I love how this and Superman are so comic book. Just comic booking at me in every frame. Wow. Just wow. A comic book movie being so comic book is the latest things fans say that's just vague enough to be meaningless, but can magically let a film off the hook for its lousy script. Superman pitched itself as full of hope. There was none of that in the movie. Fantastic Four pitched itself about family. None of that in the movie. These are people who live on the surface level, who can understand that concepts exist. Don't really know what they are. And that's shocking for people in Hollywood that earns millions of dollars a year. Should be the cream of the crop. But I think the worst thing is I'm not sure Bob Iger does either. Because in Hollywood, it's easy to say the easy answers. It's a lot harder to actually understand them. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video, if you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.